I know that it's still early in the new year and a lot of folks are still applying to new jobs and going after new opportunities. So I wonder, have you been asking yourself, should I work at a small company or should I work at a large company? I don't know the pros and cons of each. Can somebody tell me? Can I get a witness? Can I get a sign from God? Well, this is your sign from God. I hope that my experience that I'm going to share with you and the insights that I've gained help you understand what's best for you in your journey right now. The overarching theme that I've learned from working at a small company is that you are going to build your skill set and you're going to build your confidence. Whereas at a large company, you're going to build your soft skills and you're going to have access to more resources. So at a small company, why are you going to build your skill set? Well, there's less resources, which means that you might be the only designer on your team, or you might work with a team of 3 to 5 designers, right? So you might have to do user research, UI design, implement handoff processes, and basically there's more responsibility for you. And by doing the work, you're going to develop your confidence, which is going to allow you to become self-aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are, right? Naturally, because you're doing so much more, you're going to stretch yourself as a designer when you work at a small company. At a larger company, because they have more resources, you got access to professional connections who can help you and support you as mentors. You got access to a 401k plan, and you also have the opportunity to further your education through educational opportunities, right? I know folks who have worked at places like Facebook and they get a part of their tuition paid for if they're pursuing an MBA. The only caveat with working at a large company is that you might have a more specific design role. So you might have to focus specifically on user research or specifically on UI design, right? So just understand that, because there are more designers in a large company. So that's the quick breakdown, the quick answer, right? And what I noticed is that at larger companies, people tend to go to smaller companies after some time because they want to be more creative. There's more flexibility in terms of technical feasibility of what can be done at a smaller company, right? They're just starting up. They don't have 20 years of code to get through. So you can be a little bit more creative in those types of environments. And when they go to smaller companies, they're looking to build specific skill sets. So I had a friend who worked at Salesforce as a product designer, and she wanted to manage a small team for herself. But that would take a longer time to, move up the ladder at Salesforce because they have different levels. So she had the opportunity to go to a smaller startup and manage a team, and understand if she wanted to be a manager in her long-term career. But I also see that people go from smaller companies to larger companies because they're looking for specific things like work-life balance, more stability, more competitive pay, or less responsibility, right? So I feel like with both of these different types of situations, people are looking for a specific thing in their life or their career, right? So how should you go about determining what's right for you in the short term or the long term, right? I have a list of questions that you can ask yourself that I'll go through. What do you think you prefer? Why do you think you prefer working at a larger company or a smaller company? You might be saying, yo, at a larger company, I want to get paid. I'm done with this $15 an hour, right? I want to make 90K, right? So you might be saying, oh, I want to go to a larger company. Be real with yourself. But also ask yourself, what value or talent can you add to the companies that you apply to? So at smaller companies, one thing that I notice is that they're looking for people who are very passionate about the product that they produce, but also can bring innovative ideas to the company. And I also see that because there is a risk with working in a startup environment, they're willing to take a risk on people who don't have a ton of professional experience. So if you're coming out of a boot camp or HCI program in a university, They might be willing to take a risk on you because they know they might close up shop in the next 6 months or a year, right? They're not always aware of how things are going to play out. So they're willing to take a risk on you. Whereas at a large company, they're looking for people who have a little bit more skin in the game, looking for great collaborators, problem solvers, people who don't need a lot of hand holding, right? So if you have worked at a smaller company for some time and you have some idea about implementing processes and you don't need somebody to be on your back telling you what to do at all times, they're looking for folks like that. What are you looking to gain from the experience, right? Do you have a specific goal? Like, do you want to get better at user research? Do you want to get better at UI design? I see that at a smaller company, because they don't have an established design system many times, you have more opportunity to focus on UI design. But at a larger company, they have design systems, they have code bases that they're working within, and you don't have a ton of opportunity to innovate and change things up as much as you might want to. Do you like structure, or are you okay with ambiguity? Right? At a large company, there's a little bit more structure. They got some processes that they have. At a smaller company, there's a lot more ambiguity, a lot of change that can happen based on the economy, based on funding. What kinds of relationships do you like to foster? At a smaller company, you have the opportunity to develop more tight-knit relationships and close bonds with the people that you work with. At a larger company, it's a little bit harder to do that. You have relationships with a little bit less depth, right? What season are you in that life right now? Do you have 4 kids and a mortgage? Because if you do, going to a smaller company is a risk, right? You got bills to pay, you got family to feed. Are you somebody who is just hopping around the world and doing your thing? Then you might be able to go to a smaller company. So just ask yourself these questions. Write them down on paper, be honest with yourself, and I'm sure that you'll have a clearer picture about what's best for you. What I'll say about my experience working at a smaller company like Fandango is that at the time that I worked there, I didn't have any experience leading a project, right? I had no experience. I had a lot of anxiety with doing that, and I had a lot of imposter syndrome at that time. So what I did was I saw that there was an opportunity to work on the Android application that we had to build out. And I was like, yo, I told my manager, I'm interested in working on the Android app. I see that there aren't any designers who have Android experience. I think that that's a good opportunity for me to learn. I learned the material design system. I started teaching the engineers about the system, started teaching my design team about the system. I got to be looked at as a leader, got to develop a process, built my confidence from that experience, and I also learned what I was good at and what I wasn't good at, or what I didn't like, right? So I found that I was really good at bringing people together who had different opinions, which still helps me to this day in my career, several years later. But I also learned that I wasn't great at synthesizing user research data. I would prefer that the researcher that I'm working with share out those insights with the team that I'm on. Downsides of working at a smaller company, I would say that from what I've seen, I saw 5 layoffs in 2 years working at smaller companies. There is also a lack of mentorship internally. I remember I wanted to learn more about motion design and how to use After Effects, and there was nobody on my team who I could turn to learn about those things. I actually had to reach out to other designers at different companies. There's more responsibility on you. So if you're the only designer, or you work with a team of 3 to 5 designers, people are looking to you, and there's a little bit more on your shoulders, which can kind of lead to burnout for a lot of designers if they don't know how to establish good boundaries. And if you don't like your team, it's not like you could transfer to a different team internally. You might have to apply to a totally different company. If the people that you work with don't value design, and you are getting managed by a product manager or a team of engineers, like a engineering manager, they might not know how to manage you as a designer. They might not understand how to give you feedback, and they might actually tell you what to design, what solutions you should actually implement in your designs without you having a partnership between each other. I've heard that a few times, right? So these are just things to be aware of. I'm not saying that these are bad things, but just be aware that those are the type of situations that you might be getting yourself into. And overall, even if it's good or bad, depending on your preference, you are definitely going to stretch yourself when you are on a team that has less resources. Now, with some of the benefits of working at a large company, I've worked at Salesforce. I worked at Salesforce for a little bit over 2 years, and now I'm at LinkedIn. And what I see is that the main benefit that I've taken from working at a large company is that I get to learn from other people who have been doing this much longer than me, right? So I feel like the network that you can build and the resources that you can gain from just those connections is amazing, right? So I would, at Salesforce, I talked to the VP of design. I talked to managers and tried to understand what their preferences were like what did they like about management, what did they hate about management. I got to learn those things, and that's really amazing, because at a smaller company, you might not have access to all those different kinds of people and those different types of experiences, right? I also see that ever since I worked at Salesforce, it's been like what I've seen is it looks like I've built my credibility. There are smaller companies who are reaching out to me because they want to understand the insights that I gained from that experience working at a larger company. I also see that there is more work-life balance, right? Since I've transitioned into my role at LinkedIn. When I was at Salesforce, the team I was on, it was really like a startup environment, and I didn't always have the time to spend the night with my little daughter, right? And that was something that I was looking forward to with the next role that I pursued. And at LinkedIn, I've been able to actually take my daughter on dates in the evenings. So there's a little bit more work-life balance at larger companies, depending on the team that you work on. Now, for the downsides, there's a lot more people involved in processes at larger companies. So that means that in order for your designs to get signed off, you might have to get signed off from product managers, from engineers, from directors, from VPs. So there could be 30, 40 people involved with a design decision, right? And that might annoy some folks. There's a little bit more bureaucracy, right? And what's the last thing I wrote here? Relationships with less depth. The other benefit that I didn't talk about is that if you, say for instance, don't like the product or team that you're working on in a large company, you have the opportunity to transfer internally to a different team, and it can feel like you're working in a totally different company even though you're in the same organization, right? So what I hope you glean from this video so far is that there is not a better or worse situation. It all really depends on what your life situation is like right now. Personally, I wanted to grow my leadership skills, and I thought that I could do that by working at a large company. Because I'm working with so many more people and so many more personalities, it's a really good way to flex that muscle as a leader, right? And try to understand human nature. But I also wanted to have a little bit more work-life balance where I could spend time with my child and be a present father. So what I would say for you is to go through the list of questions that I gave you. Ask other designers what they think as well, but be honest with yourself and ask, just really ask, what do you think is going to be best for you right now in the short term, and how can that lead to your long-term goals, right? So I hope that this video helped you out. If it gave you a little bit more knowledge, if you feel a little bit more informed, you already know the deal. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.